Brilliant. Right, so welcome everyone to our webinar this morning. We're going to be looking at the future of CRM and CPQ in a world of generative AI, or a title that was probably a bit better crafted than that. So if I introduce us for you this morning, so I'm Dominic O'Regan. You might have seen me in a couple of other Pros webinars. I'm a senior strategic consultant with Pros. Now, I would describe Pros as nothing like all of our marketing materials. I would say we're a company that do two really simple things. We do one really simple thing, and we do it in two ways. The one simple thing is we help companies make more money. Easy, right? And we do it in two ways. We do it by helping them to set their prices right, and we do it by helping them to collect those prices, helping the sales teams to achieve those prices that we set. So that's Pros. And my role in Pros as a strategic consultant is to support our customers, partners, and prospects in understanding how we operate and what we do. And of late, I've become increasingly obsessed with AI, and specifically with generative AI, because I've seen what an amazing difference it's making in the space of price setting, and what a almost transformational impact it can have in particular situations. So I am honestly, literally lying awake at night thinking about AI. It's a bit sad, but that's kind of my world at the moment. But I'm aware that's quite a narrow field, right? Just looking at the pricing impact. And our topic today is a little bit broader than that. We're looking at CRM and CPQ as a whole. And so we've asked Ingmar to join us today because of his kind of depth of experience and his more broad thinking in terms of the application of AI. Now, to introduce Ingmar, I will fail to do him justice. And I read his bio and I thought, shall I read his bio to you? And then I thought, no, because bios are a bit boring, aren't they? And the essence of his bio, as I read it, was that shortly after he learned to walk, he started getting excited about CRM. Broadly speaking, it says something like that. But in reality, of course, it talks about many, many years helping companies to implement successful CRM solutions, both directly within industry and then, of course, within Walpole Partners as program manager. What shone out for me is the complexity of the environments that he's worked in, because that's really where the challenge is in delivering a solution that's going to be successful in the future. And complexity for me is not multi-country, sort of is and sort of isn't. It's multicultural, and countries come with cultures, and so one leads to the other. But it tends to be not the data difference, it's this currency and that currency, it's the way that people go to market that's different, it's the cultural attitudes, the conversations they have, and everything else. And Ingmar has a huge experience in helping companies do that, and do that really, really well. So thank you for joining us today, Ingmar.
Hey, Dominic.
Now we've got a big question that we're coming to, which is how do we think about the future of CRM and CPQ, and how do we organize how we think about that? And I know that you've got some good thoughts on that, but I want to ask one really simple, really blunt first question, because we had this original title, right, of does generative AI mean the death of CRM and CPQ? And then our marketing teams looked at it and went, well, it's a bit deathy, isn't it? That doesn't sound good. Let's maybe have something a bit more positive. But I still want to ask the question, because people are looking at generative AI and they're saying, is it coming from my job? Is this thing going to have a future? What does the world look like? And it's the most extreme question, isn't it? So let's start with that really simple one. Do we reckon there's a future?
Yeah, I love the question, right? And yes, our working title was a bit more confrontational than maybe the one we finished up on. But is it the end, of customer relationship management and configure, price, quote? Will generative AI, overtake those kind of technological capabilities? And my firm answer is no. But will generative AI?
For that. Otherwise, I would have been in real trouble for organising this webinar.
Saved a lot of jobs right there. But let's also be looking at this in a way that we know that the technology that is out there will never be presented anymore in the same way, nor being utilized and applied in the same way as we kind of know it today or up to today. I think that's where the disruption will be, is in its access, utilization, and
Mm.
application.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. That's a relief, I've got to say. Um, so so I know when we had a chat prior to the call today, you had a nice way of kind of organising your thinking in terms of how the AI might begin to impact different areas of CRM and CPQ. So I wondered if you might sort of start to share that with the audience and see where that conversation takes us.
No, no, absolutely. I mean, you said it right, Dominic. I love working in environments that invite complexity. It's can be it from a vertical segment perspective. Typically where CPQ sits well is kind of industrial, high tech, manufacturing kind of companies and organizations, and they attract a lot of complexity. And within that, I'd like, as a holistic thinker, as you rightfully got from my bio, I like to organize things in concepts, which not everybody can, but I like to do so. So there's three always big layers, as I call them, within the CRM and CPQ context, and the base foundational layer of both technologies and how they interact is obviously around data, the data layer itself. And that immediately also brings us into the generative AI space, because guess what? Generative AI does best. It applies, right, algorithms, logic to data sets. And the more data sets, the better it will learn. Hence, the better the outputs will become, that in our case and in our applied case are related to CRM and CPQ. But it always needs to be actionable insights. It's not just data for the fun of data, right? Which, by the way, as you said, keep you awake at night. This is something that drives me, is like, okay, how do you turn it into actionable insight so it drives action and activities altogether? And that moves us from data, that we all need to drive with these logic into the next layer. That is the logical layer, which where AI shows its capability for deep understanding of relationships to begin with, customer relationship management, and take the complexity in the relationship. You said it, culture, language, geography, business application, whatever you want to put it, but then structure it in such a way that it all becomes logical again within that context of CRM and CPQ technology. Therefore, identifying, how do we deal with the process? How does this create and identify opportunities for interaction, leads, accounts, contacts into quotes and business proposals and orders. But, also, how do you mitigate risks around it and make sure you're in the conversation? Because the top layer, I talked about the data layer, about the logical layer. The top layer is the one, as we said with your intro question, Dominic, which is going to be affected most and quickest, which is the presentation layer, right? UI, UX, so we'll go into the acronyms in a bit as well. But how do you enhance really the user experience? Because if you ask a single kind of sales user of CRM and CPQ tools, what they would hate most of these applications is just the way that they are forced to use it, right? So this is where generative AI and AI in general will play a huge role by affecting that user experience, personalizing interfaces, the way you interact with this technology. Obviously, the thing that's very hot today is generating dynamic content, and then ultimately facilitating some of the intuitive interactions you want to get within these kind of platforms and technologies. So I think that's where the immediate short-term impact will lies, in that third layer on user experience and user interface.
So those those layers that you talked about in terms of sort of the data and then the kind of the structure of the environment and the user interface. Is there a fourth component, or maybe that falls within one of those first two, and maybe it's down the line, or maybe but one of the things that's been noodling my mind a little bit is, does it begin to play a part not just in the use and the application, but does it play a part in how these things are set up in the first place? Can these technologies begin to actually configure the CRM or CPQ for me as well?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a virtual digital assistant, right? It's like
Mm.
instead of only asking, how can I interact with you, and all the data you harness within the CRM CPQ structure, it's effectively also the other way around. I totally believe that it's not about, oh, here's the standard cookbook, right, of setting up such
Mhm.
systems. It's also about, let me tell you, through generative AI, of how I want you as technology to behave and to be set up so it becomes fit for purpose a lot quicker than what may be seen today if you go through, a standard implementation routine that I should know well because I am also representing Walpole Partnership as an integration, as an SI system integrator in an implementation landscape. But I do believe that generative AI in particular will bring us there, right? Is it going to
Yeah.
help organizations to set up the technology with them and for them, much rather than them just to be the recipient of what is
Mm.
being presented in the CRM and CPQ technology?
So it's not just coming for the world of CRM CPQ and components of it. It's also coming for some of our jobs within that space, which is helping people to get the most out of it, right? We're not panicking yet,
Definitely.
right? We still think we've
No,
got a
no,
role
no,
to
but
play.
yeah,
Right? Oh, thank goodness for
indeed.
that
But
again.
yeah, good start. Good.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we think that the thing that will change first is the sort of user interface and the sales experience of CRM and CPQ, and that's coming in. So I've begun to see things like in the environment that I'm most familiar with, things like Microsoft's Copilot and stuff like that. And you can
Yeah,
begin to
sure.
see applications of where that might complete information on behalf of the salesperson, maybe, or take those tasks that they are uncomfortable with completing on a regular basis and just do them for them within the CRM or CPQ environment. But
Yeah.
where's the end of that journey? Do we get to the point where the salesperson isn't conscious of the CRM or CPQ, right?
It's a great thought process because in my mind, if you really race ahead, just taking away obviously repetitive tasks and making sure you've got your virtual assistants ready to engage with users of the CRM CPQ technology. I can see this turning into what Wall Street, right? It has always this trackers at the bottom of your screen,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think ultimately generative AI will help to become a conversational intelligent tracker, as in,
Mm-hmm.
I can listen, right? I can have the entire internet, listen for me as an individual user of CRM and CPQ technology, and find, what in that ticker, if it goes down at the bottom of a screen or it becomes a prompt driven system, it's going to tell me when it's time for me to start interacting, and whether
Mm-hmm.
the interaction for me as a user goes to a customer, a colleague, to create content or just to be in a conversation. The orchestration of it may very well be completely done by the technology, right? Let's be very clear. It will, let's put it like this, it will not need an individual user clicking some buttons or finding its way through a workflow. This will actually all be prepared as the user just thinks about this. It will come to them as far as utilizing the technology, and it will prompt it, right, ticker wise,
Mm,
like the Wall Street ticker. It will tell them, here you go, here's your high value, this is the green one, you better engage now, because through the algorithms and the intelligence, this is to be determined of the highest value encounter that can be engaged in right now, and therefore it
mm,
becomes actionable at that point. But yeah, to your question, I do think the technology will take over a lot of that thought process and will just spit out at the right time what the conversational intelligence needs to be at the present time that it needs to be acted upon. So, if we ever dare to say salespeople were lazy, I'm afraid they will become more lazy, in the sense that they will
yeah.
rely on the technology to tell them what to do and when to do it, which then takes them away from the goal, of course, perhaps a bit. But that is very much a good way of looking at what this technology can do for them.
So salespeople need to be worried, not people involved in CRM and CPQ solutions, right?
Yeah, might put it like that. Might put it like.
Yeah. Okay. So from what you were describing, I was sort of having two opposing thoughts. Because on the one hand, I was thinking, so this sort of creates an environment where perhaps the sort of change management aspect of implementing solutions might be almost non-existent. Maybe that's going too far, but in effect, I don't need to be trained on a sequence of things to click on and processes and things like that. Now, maybe
Correct.
the fundamental change to the way I'm working is so big that I need some change management to help you with that. but
I think so too.
but is that the right way to think about it?
I believe so. It's if the technology, or dare we say, when the technology will actually help with the orchestration, of each of the interactions that come, and each of the actions that need to be taken, very much so, any in a training context or in a rollout context of such technology will be very much about behavioral aspects of how to deal with what the technology has on offer for you as an individual user. So, the I'm gonna call them softer skills, but they are not softer. It
Mm,
is the coaching skills that come with the organizational behavior, right? That would be the most desired, from the protection of the brand promise of any organization that adopts this, very much deeply the Gen AI developed technologies, needs to be ready to adopt it. So the change management is still very much going to be the biggest aspect of implementation or rollout of these technologies, but it needs to be done at the coaching level, far less at
mm,
the technology level. So the skills that will be required to take full benefit and recognize the value of it will need to come through that change management process, which we know notably today many organizations struggle, right, with that
mm.
aspect of adoption of pricing and quoting tools as much as adopting CRM.
Yeah, and I wonder whether today people have focused a little bit too much on the technology side of the change management, when all along the coaching side was perhaps where you would really drive and win and get people on board, and they'd find their own way to get through the technology side of it when they're motivated to do so. By removing that, you can only focus on the bit that really is going to drive value, maybe.
Uh, Definitely. And, I've
Mm,
recognized this for many, many years. You can tell from the color of my beard and hair, is that always the most efficient users of CRM and CPQ technology were actually always the ones that defied the technology aspect of it already. 20 years ago, they said, I don't need that technology aspect. I know what I want to get out of it, and I'll find my way to get it out of there.
Hmm.
But that was a big uphill struggle, because one, they were seen as defiance at the time, as you know, what do you mean? You're not adopting the technology. And they said, well, tell me why I need it, instead of
Hmm.
telling me which
Yeah,
buttons to click. And and that behavior is still the right behavior, because you don't want to look at the technology for the sake of being the perfect administrator of it. You want to look at the technology to see how the is it going to unlock value for me as a user, and going to make me shine and turn me into a champion of utilizing the tool set. And and that is where I think generative AI will help these, then noted
yeah,
and labeled defiance, and actually now turn them into champions, because they will get what they need in order to be utilizing the technology for what it's worth for them. And that is actually the right way of thinking about this, right? It's to
yeah,
unlock the value by having the capacity to orchestrate for them exactly what they want. And yeah, also this element, right, of the self-service components
mm,
of it, that drive towards the behavior and the interactions that hopefully always will lead to increased business, or at least increased more profitable business, is something that users of this technology will want to get.
yeah. So we've been focusing conversation kind of primarily on the sort of the sales impact and the front end components of CRM and CPQ solutions, and I guess that's because the current biggest steps forward and the most sort of generative AI that people are aware of are the large language models, and their application is obviously
Correct.
very directly in the world of do stuff for you and work out, understand
Yes.
and complete tasks and so on. But I suppose those other components of understanding, structuring, and manipulating data are in a way more foundational, because the front end can only do what it can do. It can only give you insight if it understands something. And the
Correct.
large language models can deliver that for you, but
Mhm.
they're not going to find it within the data set. And so there's a
Correct. And
is there a journey? Are you aware of models yet that are really in that world of structuring that data?
and to really answer that question, by the way, I think the answer is yes. And we know there are models out there, indeed, but very not much advocated or published, because one,
Mm,
there's lots of legal implications, and
yeah.
potentially also very big due diligence and finance ones. But those models already exist. And
Mm,
we take a quick trip back of how this kind of all was started. The background to this is obviously always captured under the wonderful concept of BI, right?
mm,
Business intelligence. Where does that start? And this has been a known concept, of course, for a very long time, tens of years. And then from business intelligence, unlocking some of the power of data, moving towards machine learning was already a huge step, right? So that is,
mm,
it's like, how does data help us to learn faster, so that at least that the middle layer I talked about, the logical layer, becomes more clever, because it gets fed, with comparable, data points, proof points, and then, starting to work at the third layer, which is really the intelligence to become artificial. Is it okay? Now let's have the computer scientists think with us and for us, so that the
mm,
system that we're actually feeding data into starts to model the data as it's being fed into it, and then transforms it so it becomes a
mhm,
reality once it's being presented to the users. It's a bit scary, yeah, still. It's something that will shake a lot of people at their core, let the machines take over, because that in essence is what will happen through those different models that are coming to bear, and you can think of a few with very big names, such as Meta, that is already
Mm.
becoming extremely strong in positioning these models, but obviously is looking for its kind of legal boundaries, or better, its
Mm.
legal compliance to be able to roll them out. But that they already exist today, within amongst the very big, technology
Yeah.
providers, is without a doubt already answered by the affirmative, to say, well, these models already exist. Now let's see when we can have them rolled out to the bigger communities that they're obviously targeted at. But yeah, they're already out
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of, I think of what pros are doing in terms of our AI applications, and we're very focused on things like the price component, and
there. Yep.
more broadly, the I suppose it's very business applicable focused AIs that are understanding the price you could achieve or the alternative products you could sell, but they're very the phrase I hate. Do you know what AI people call something that's very focused, right? Have you heard this? Because I was shocked and upset by
Go
it.
on.
Weak AI, right? It's weak
Yeah,
if it's
exactly.
focused
That's
on one
poor.
task.
It's poor.
Yeah, like as
Exactly.
if
It's
weak is a
poor.
bad thing, right? So anyway, it's
Yeah.
very upsetting, but very focused, and you kind of perhaps need those focused AIs alongside the generalist things that are looking at how you interpret and leverage that set, and of course the front
Yes.
end application to the sales. Yeah, yeah.
And I really just want to latch on to that as we're kind of approaching the end, and we'll give it back to you after
Mm,
this. Is um, this capability, particularly, of the unlocking of data by applying the right model to it, obviously has been in existence again for many moons already
mm,
before today. And I think only now people start realizing of the power that is, like, within pricing and quoting
mm,
technology already present today. But
mm,
right back to the start of our conversations, you have to have that vision, within an organization, that this beast, this engine needs to be fed by the data
mm,
sets, and that will help the models to unlock the value quite readily, because again, the technology is already embedded, within the pro solution to begin with. I know,
yeah,
firsthand, from implementing it. But it is that big awareness now of the general public, honestly, of the capability of doing something with those data sets, the complexity and the technology that is actually already embedded and ready to capture it. Those you will find with the best CRM and CPQ providers, like adopting Copilot and other means already today. It is already there, and it's about unlocking it and finding the right, let's boast about ourselves also a little bit, and find the right partners who understand to unlock it too, because that is what in the future jobs will hold. It's not about just implementing the technology, it's showing, where the real value lies, and making sure
yeah,
organizations can run with the ball, much rather than trying to describe what that ball looks like. Definitely.
yeah. And the the distant future of a world without a user interface and intelligent systems directing you, it's not going to come in one sudden moment. We are going to go on a journey, right, of steps that make sense and have value at each point, I hope. Right.
Mm, I believe so.
Yeah. Oh, phew, again. Right. Okay. So we're getting towards the end of the time that we've got available. I there's I can see just one question on at the moment, so we'll head to that now. But if anybody has any other questions that they want to put in before we finish, there's the chat and the questions that should be open in the webinar settings. So just type it in if you've got a burning question. The one that I can see there already is really about, and I'll sort of paraphrase it, but essentially you look at things like Microsoft's Copilot and you naturally think, well, that would work on Microsoft Dynamics. And you think of the investments that other vendors are putting in their spaces, and you kind of say, am I going to need to, are these going to become closed systems? Is sort of the essence of the question. Will I need to
Mm.
use Copilot with Dynamics and something else with Salesforce and so on? Or are these all going to be, are you going to have to find your own perfect blend, right?
Yes, yes. And and it's a great question because it again, blessed, by and with experience, it just takes me back to the origination of also much of the CRM and CPQ technology, which was very similar thought process. Oh, you can only do this as best of stack, and you need to be within a certain
Mm,
technology provider in order to really see all the value of it. Which then, in a time span for these two major applications of about 10, maybe 15 years, we're forced to open up, with complete open standard integration to
mm,
any of, best of breed, or even, overall best practices that were shared between the technology providers, connecting to the different tool sets and mechanisms that were out there. Now, I think it will not take 15 years for generative AI, right, to open up this landscape, within and between providers that want to, play a role in this. And there, you find all your big technology giants that will want to
mm.
impose themselves here. But it will not take 15 years before they will be asked to open and forced by the user communities to
Yeah.
open up their standards, so that there's much more choice in that. But right now, yeah, you got to be careful as an organization that is on the receiving and implementation end of this Gen AI driven technology, that you're not boxing yourself up, because I think that is the risk right
Mm,
now. It's like, oh yeah, you can only work with say Microsoft to find exactly what you need for Gen AI. That may be the case today, but it definitely will open up, I think, fairly rapidly, so that you don't feel you will have to be making only one choice in it for the main provider
yeah.
of these technologies.
So
So that's experience talking much more than knowing what will happen. That we will.
that openness might mean that the CRM of the future, as we think of it today, is more the data storage, and the actual choice you're making is about the front end AI or AIs that you're using, and what sort of system it's stored in
Absolutely.
might not be very important to you anymore, in a way. Yeah.
Spot on.
Fantastic. Right. So we don't have a burning list of extra questions. So if anybody has any other questions that they want to send to either of us, send them through. I know that our teams will make sure they get routed and will get you written responses or engage as you wish. Thank you for your time today, Ingmar. It's been really fascinating and always enjoyable to talk to you and to share that chat with everyone this morning.
Thank you, Dominic.
And watch out for future webinars. There'll be more.
Absolutely. Bye for now.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.